Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Whole Home Show. I'm Tony Joe, your host here every week, bringing you tips, education, and updates on home-related matters. Whether you're in the real estate market or if you're looking for decorating or improvement ideas for your home, this is a great place to be. Our show comes to you every week with the support of our show partners, Denise Webster, mortgage broker with Dominion Lending Center's Modern Mortgage Group, JP Sellez, insurance advisor at Westland Insurance, operating as Island Savings Insurance, the Sitka Law Group for your real estate, wills and estates, corporate and personal injury needs, and Shoreline Inspections with Reese Jacob and Monica Gass. And of course, there's me. I've been selling real estate here in Victoria since 1991. I'd be pleased to help you as well, too. If you need any help or direction in your real estate transaction, give us, the Whole Home Show team members, a call. We would love to hear from you. Real estate, whether you're buying or selling, is a very complicated process. That's why we real estate professionals exist, navigating you along the way in your journey. But there's a lot of terminology and phrases that exist out there that are confusing to those who don't do this on a daily basis. Today, my guest co-host and I will be going through frequently asked questions about the real estate process, explaining in detail and in plain, simple English what is seemingly a foreign language. My guest today is Kyle Kerr. Kyle Kerr is an associate partner of the Prime Real Estate team. We work together. He is a 10-year veteran of real estate here in Greater Victoria, past president of the Victoria Real Estate Board in 2018. He's going to join us in just a moment. We always, of course, love hearing from you. So if you have a story or a question that you'd like to share with us, let us know. You can find us by calling our hotline, 250-414-6540. That's 250-414-6540. Be sure to leave a message or find us online, CFAX1070.com. Look under shows. There you'll find the Whole Home Show with me, Tony Joe, and we'll discuss it on the air. We love hearing stories. We're going to jump right into frequently asked questions, though. Kyle, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Tony. Good to see you again on here. And just so everyone knows, I only speak in simple language. So
you only speak in simple language. So that's important because, again, you know, it's truly it is a whole different language, isn't it?
Totally. And it's the same when you go see a lawyer. It's just like, speak simple language to me so we can understand what's going on.
Yeah. I think realtors forget sometimes, because we're in it every day and, you and I, or we talk to other colleagues, we use certain phrases and terminology. Completion date. What's completion date, right? And of course, Our clients are like, "What does that mean? What does that mean?" Right? And
what is it? All the acronyms that we have. I think that always scares people. PDS, CMA, etc. There's always so many little things that we're working under, right?
And also too, sometimes it's regional because we've got our Victoria acronyms. They're often different in Vancouver or Ontario or in the States, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all call different things, right?
Well, yeah, and even within Victoria, when we start talking about municipalities and zoning codes and different bylaws, sometimes those have acronyms and we throw those around like R1 zoning, R2, R3, whatever. And so that can be a totally different language wherever you are.
Yeah. Well, listen, for our listeners, we compiled this list of questions and really what this is these are things that people have asked us over the years and it's things that we bump into kind of regularly, right? Yeah,
exactly. We just want to answer those easy ones.
Now, you and we've not practiced this.
No.
So we're going to find out where this goes. Actually, this is gonna be a good test of our skills. So let's see how we go here, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Although you just brought something up, and let's start with this. And of course, we have a good understanding of this because both you and I are past presidents of the real estate board. So we spent time at the directors table and we have a lot of knowledge about organized local Victoria real estate, right?
Of course. Okay. Well, I would say even national and provincial too. You've sat on national committees. I've sat on national committees.
True. Okay. So here's a question that I did not put on your list. So I'm hitting you up with this right now. Okay. Let's talk about map areas. So we know about districts in Victoria, right? We know about municipalities. The real estate board has got this thing called map areas. And sometimes people go, what is a map area? Who decides that? Right?
Yeah. Well, the mapping areas has been a way, and you might have more history than me.
Oh,
but
now you're passing it on to me. You're passing it on to me.
No, but I mean, the map areas we
Yes.
have created, I believe part of that work was done with Davenport Maps. But
Mhm.
really what it does is it geographically sets up different areas within a certain municipality or city. So when I think about that, the big one is Saanich, right?
Yeah.
So in Saanich, in the MLS system, you can look up Saanich East
Yep.
and Saanich West,
Yes.
which I
But
always
there's
tell
only
people.
one Saanich. So Saanich is
Exactly.
Saanich, right? Yes.
Exactly. And the way I explain it to people is I always say the Pat Bay Highway is kind of the split highway there. So if you're on the east, if you want to be in Saanich East, that means you want Cordova Bay, Gordon Head, Cadboro Bay, Camosun, or Camosun Lansdowne campus, those types of areas. And if you want Saanich West, you're talking Prospect Lake, Royal Oak, the Gorge, all those great areas on that side.
Yeah. I love the fact that our map areas have names on them, because you go to other places like, I think Toronto is an example. Like there's other cities where it's like zone 252 or,
Yeah.
area 123 or whatever. Whereas
Yeah.
we got names, right?
Well, exactly. And it really allows us to be very detailed with someone. If they come in and say, well, I want to live in Oak Bay, but not just Oak Bay, I want to live in South Oak Bay, or I want to live in the Gonzales neighborhood, we can really get nice and tight without even having to draw a circle around it, which we can do as well. But, we can really target in those neighborhoods. And that's all been done by, data research by the real estate board and kind of working within some of the municipal neighborhood plans and such. But you're right. It's clearly identified, and a consumer doesn't have to think, well, what is zone 233 Fairfield or zone 255 South Oak Bay? Yeah.
So the other thing too, and I'm glad you brought this up, is because different sub areas have different values. So when we're doing an evaluation, you can't compare Estevan to Uplands. You can't compare Cadboro Bay to
Quadra,
right?
Yeah.
So that's a very important thing. The other thing too is the map area is something that doesn't fall under Saanich. Like Saanich didn't devise these map areas. It's actually the real estate board, and we did that through our data collection process, right? Which is the reason why we've seen some changes. So Fairfield became Fairfield East and Fairfield West a few years ago.
Yes.
Right.
And for our viewers, Fairfield West is Cook Street Village. Fairfield East is Gonzales.
Yes.
It makes sense.
And then we had this thing called Gravel Pit in Colwood.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which we used to always bug Gary McInnes about, past president Gary McInnes, because he lives there. Yeah. And of course, that is now Royal Bay.
Yes. Well, even Bear Mountain had to be added about 15 years ago, right? Correct. Bear Mountain went from just being Skirt Mountain to all of a sudden, now, and technically with Bear Mountain, you might have to search in both Langford and the Highlands,
depending on what side it is.
Yeah. Exactly. And you've got some of those new developments coming in the Highland side.
Yeah. One last thing I want to touch on with this whole map area thing. I had a listener. I ended up flipping hot dogs with her at the Oak Bay Car Show last year. And nice. She brought up, she said, well, I can't remember what neighbor she is. I think she's Oaklands or something. She's like, I don't think that we should be called Oakland's map area. We should be called whatever it is, Hillside or whatever. Yeah. And she asked me how to change it. And I said to her, I said, well, it's a complicated process, because our data that we've been collecting for 30 years at the Victoria Real Estate Board, it's not an easy answer of moving the border, because a lot of the data that we have has to do with the map areas, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we're looking for consistency for that historical purpose.
Yeah, which is the reason why we have that data. So anyways, just want to start up with that question. I'm looking at the list right now. We got like 20 questions, and it took us like 8 minutes to do the first one. So I hope we can get through this.
Yeah, we'll get through this. Maybe we'll just have to do another episode.
Could be. Listeners, you're listening to Frequently Asked Questions all about Victoria real estate today with my co-host, Kyle Kerr from the Prime Real Estate team. We are going to take a quick little break. When we come back, we'll be picking this up with our list of 20. Let's see how many of these we can get through.
Rapid fire. Let's go.
Got it. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi there, and thanks for coming back. You're listening to the Whole Home Show. I'm Tony Joe. I have guest host today, Kyle Kerr, past president of the Victoria Real Estate Board, member of the Prime Real Estate team at Remax Camosun here in Victoria. My associate partner. We've been working together for years. Kyle, we have a question. We have a list of questions, I'm sorry. Frequently asked questions. Let's go. Start it up. What's your first question?
Well, we were just talking about map areas and, the MLS system and everything. So a question I get sometimes is, what is the difference between Realtor.ca and the MLS?
Oh, Realtor.ca, which at some point was called MLS.ca.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what is the difference for maybe someone looking at the public national Realtor.ca site and that local MLS that we talk about a lot?
Okay. So first of all, people often complain about Realtor.ca, functionality or lacking features or whatever, right? What consumers need to understand is that I think it's 96 boards in Canada that fall under CREA, the Canadian Real Estate Association. They all subscribe to this Realtor.ca program. So all of the MLS systems upload to the Canadian Real Estate Association and Realtor.ca. We all use different systems. So quite often it's a fitting a square peg in a round hole kind of situation. So it's a catch-all, right? But the reality is Realtor.ca is not a complete database. It only provides information for consumers. Most consumers already know that the sold data is not there. That's information that is still held with us, although this is changing, right?
Yeah.
But it is not the MLS. And also, too, there's often a delay because there's a delay from when we load information onto our MLS system to when it uploads to Realtor.ca. So it is not the same. It's completely different.
Yeah, that transfer is getting quicker now. I think within a couple hours now, once we
load it here
locally.
It used to be
a day, exactly. And I think, you're right. It's interesting that local MLS and how it's different, and there's more data there. But that's why that data on Realtor.ca is a little bit higher level, because again, different definitions of things, right? Bedrooms, lot size,
a bungalow. What's a bungalow versus, and then frost level. There's different jurisdictions, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, most consumers, it's always good for them to get connected with a realtor, whatever market you're in, because they can set you up with a direct subscription from the local MLS, which is wherever you're shopping, because you'll get a lot more detailed information. You'll have access to more floor plans and media. So that's why it's important to get on one of those search programs, just because Realtor.ca is limited.
Yeah, all Realtor.ca really is today's answer online of what used to be the catalog. We used to have that catalog that came out every couple of weeks, right?
Well, and I think even going more historically, brokerages never used to share their listings, right? That was the history of the multiple listing service. Correct. Was, if people remember, you'd have to go to each individual brokerage to find out what listings they had. And
it's like a car lot. Yeah. You got to go to different car lots to get, right.
And it was, when did the multiple listing service, even in its book format, when did that start? In the 80s?
We've got one at the library at the real estate board. So
that's right.
I'm going to say it would have been like 82 or something, or 83.
Yeah. So that was finally the cooperation of brokerages working together, sharing information more readily, so that the consumer could work with the agent they wanted to and be able to look at all those properties. So it was a way of sharing information and sharing properties so that consumers had more choice.
There's a lot more. The actual MLS system's got so much data. We can do charts, graphs, information, back history, so much stuff. So that's the difference. Okay, Realtor.ca and MLS, big difference.
Huge difference.
Here's the next question here about listings, Kyle. The difference between what is an exclusive listing versus a MLS listing.
Well, I think we almost just described what it used to be historically. Everything used to be an exclusive listing. So for a consumer nowadays, that means that your agent will not be posting the listing on the MLS. It won't be on Realtor.ca like we just talked about. So you are saying we exclusively want you to market this property, not share it in the traditional means of using the MLS. Now, they may still share it on social media or on their own website, but it does limit the exposure because it's not on the MLS.
Yeah, they're not getting the Realtor.ca stuff. They're not getting other realtors probably will never bump into it because it doesn't show up on the MLS system, right?
Exactly. It all depends on what is agreed upon under the marketing activities in the Schedule A of that listing contract. Now, we see it sometimes maybe on the luxury side of the market
Mhm.
where, someone with a 5, 10, $15 million home might not want the general public to see all the pictures and be snooping around and know that they're up for sale. So some people do it for their privacy.
Yep.
But a lot of times, we've used it in the past in if we're getting a listing ready to market
Preparation.
maybe in a month.
Yeah.
So we might do it early, put up a sign early, and we need to have a listing contract to handle those marketing activities. Everything needs to be in writing, of course.
100%. 100%. Okay. Hey, listen, as we're on the conversation of listing contract, another question that we get, I just got this the other day. What is the minimal term for a listing contract? So when somebody signs a listing, is there a minimum?
Well, if they want to be on the MLS, that's a yes. The MLS and the VREB policy regulations state that it needs to be a minimum of a 60-day contract.
Yeah. Okay. Now
So
that's
the minimum.
that's not to say that somebody signs it and sticks with it for 60 days. Sometimes, they might change their mind, and maybe the realtor has had a cancellation conversation with them, right?
Yeah. There's always that conversation between the two parties. It's a legal contract, and things can be renegotiated.
Yeah.
How are cancellations? And maybe there's another quick question.
Yep.
Cancellations.
Yeah.
So someone signs, say, a 4-month contract.
Yep.
Something comes up, family situation, life situation, and they don't want to sell anymore.
Okay.
How does that conversation look, Tony?
Well, so this is the key thing. It is a legal contract that's in place, that multiple listing service, that multiple listing contract. And it means that if either party wants to break the contract, there needs to be a agreement on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you bring up this question because we've heard many cases where same situation, seller decides not to sell anymore, talks to the realtor says, no way, Jose, I've spent money, our agreement lasts for the next, 3 or 4 months. I'm not letting you out. We've heard those stories before, right?
Yes.
Right? And the brokerage has the right to do that. Now, our policy, you and I on the prime real estate team, I would say that if something happened with a seller, our own personal policy would be, hey, we get it. We understand. Let's do business in the future. So let's put it off
Yep.
for now, and then we can regroup at another time, right? But that's
Exactly.
our policy. That's our policy.
Exactly. And every agent and every brokerage reserves the right. And that's a good conversation people should have with and there is standard language included in the contract. But as you said, different agents and brokerages will have different policies. Some might ask for what they call a marketing fee to be paid out, right?
Yep.
So in that circumstance where, and as you know, we spend a lot of money, by the time a person's listing goes live with virtual tours and video and you could have $1,000 to $1,500 spent very quickly on a property. And so some agents do reserve the right to say, well, if you want to cancel early, we'd like to be reimbursed for those marketing expenses, and then everyone's good. So everyone handles it differently.
Yeah. By the way, I would have to say that if an agent was doing that, that should be written out in the listing agreement from the start.
Exactly. Yes, it should be.
Because we've also heard of cases where a seller says, well, I want to cancel, and the listing agent says they'll do it, but now all of a sudden they're hitting me over the head with this $1,500. It should have been established at the very beginning, right?
Everything should be transparent and with clear communication, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. All right. While we're at it, we're doing good so far. We're doing good. Yeah. There is on the listing agreement a commission holdover clause. You want to talk about that?
I've also heard it called the commission hangover clause.
Oh, okay. All right. It's plain, it's nothing secret. It's there, right?
Yeah.
So what
is that section 8, section 10? Yeah. What that really states is that if we list someone's home, we carry it on for 3 or 4 months, we list it, we're advertising, the signs in the door, listing expires.
Yep.
Seller says, okay, I need to take a break. We want to take the summer off. We don't want any more showings. We want to, and you or I get a phone call and an agent says, hey, you remember that house at 123 Main Street? My clients, they're really interested. They'd like to look. We call the seller. They say, sure, have them come through. The buyers love it. They write an offer. Everything goes through.
Yep.
Now, because that person came to the property through our marketing efforts, technically we wouldn't need to renew a new listing contract for the commissions to still be payable.
Yeah.
So it allows us to still get paid. It allows the sellers to still be able to authorize payment to the agent for their marketing activities benefiting the seller and realizing a sale.
Yeah, 60 days, I think the
Yes.
clause is, right? Yeah. And by the way, that holdover clause is nullified if the seller relists with somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. So listeners, we're doing frequently asked questions right now, things that people want to know about the real estate process with my co-host, Kyle Kerr. So much more to cover, but we do need to take another break here right now. We'll be back with more stuff. And by the way, if you want to listen to this, just go to cfax1070.com. We stream this every week, and you can find our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Back in just a moment. Hi there, everyone. Thanks for coming back. You're listening to another episode of the Whole Home Show. I'm Tony Joe. Our show comes to you with the support of our show partners, Denise Webster, mortgage broker with Dominion Lending Center's Modern Mortgage Group, JP Sellers, insurance advisor at Westland Insurance, operating as Island Savings Insurance, the Sitka Law Group for your real estate, wills and estates, corporate and personal injury needs, and Shoreline Inspections with Reese Jacob and Monica Gass. If you need any help in your real estate transaction, give any of the Whole Home Show team members a call. They would love to hear from you. We can help you out as well, too. We are the Prime Real Estate Team. With me today as a co-host, is Kyle Kerr. He's an associate partner at the Prime Real Estate Team at Remax Camosun. We've been selling real estate here since 1991. Kyle, thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Now, I want to remind everyone, too, that if you're just dialing in right now, we're doing a frequently asked questions, things people ask about real estate all the time. Kyle and I are uncovering the wizard behind the curtain. We are we're giving you guys the whole Coles Notes about real estate as a process. And by the way, if you want to listen to us, of course, we do stream on the CFAX1070.com website, or you can find our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. We talked before the break about seller stuff, listing contracts, realtor.ca, and all that stuff. What do we do next, Kyle, on our list of questions?
Well,
let's bang some quick ones off. We'll do some rapid fire.
Sounds good. So a lot of questions we get asked when people start looking for properties is all the different forms of ownership and the different property types are out there. So here's a quick one. Yeah. Tony, leasehold versus freehold.
Okay, freehold is where you own the land and the title is under your name, right?
Yeah.
Leasehold, which is common on leasehold condos, for instance, that we see, they're older properties, they predate the Strata Properties Act. You may see the name of a corporation or a company as the landowner, and what you are buying is you're actually pre-buying the lease of the property for the rest of the term, right? Yeah. Whether it's a 50-year or 75-year or whatever. The biggest difference is because you do not own an interest in the land, these are not mortgaged traditionally because there's no attachment to the dirt. Exactly. That's the reason why leasehold properties are always cheaper. And we do see them in town. It's special discipline, though. Agent needs to know how to deal with them.
Exactly. Well, another place you might find them is on First People's land, of course, as well.
Yes.
So if you're looking in, the Songhees, the Esquimalt, or across the island or across Canada, most First People's land is handled by a leasehold as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a place for leasehold properties. I remember I've had retirees sell their house in Fairfield and buy a leasehold at Cook Street there, 777 Cook Street, right?
Yeah.
Stay in the same neighborhood. Instead of spending $400,000 on a condo, they're just spending, less.
Yeah.
And it's still the same as living in a
condo. Exactly. Yeah. For people on those fixed incomes it works as an investment as well. I've had a couple clients buy a couple of those smaller units at the Orchard House, which is in James Bay.
Yeah.
And, if you've got money and you've got cash and, maybe you buy an affordable studio for under 200,000.
Yep.
And you get a tenant in there and it's good cash flow for someone who maybe doesn't want to have as much money in the bank.
Yeah. And this is another reason why we get buyers that say, hey, why are those townhouses at 1506 Admiral so cheap?
Exactly.
It's because they're leasehold, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bare land. Let's talk quickly about stratas.
Yes.
What is a bare land strata?
You tell us.
Okay. Bare land strata. So strata has a few different forms of ownership. Of course, we're used to seeing condominiums and townhomes as that traditional. And really, we call those a building strata, where it means the strata and the group of ownership, the group of owners is responsible for the roof, the structure, the drainage, the parkade. Where a bare land strata, we see a lot of these in Langford and in Souk and areas with more land where the developer goes in, subdivides up all the parcels of land, and maybe the only common thing that they share is a road and some lights and some gardening. And so some municipalities will ask developers to do this because they want the road to be private and maintained by the residents in that situation. And so when you buy that piece of land, you have some shared responsibilities, but your house is your own responsibility.
Yeah.
So it's a way to get something for a little bit cheaper, but sometimes it allows you to have a park or a nice road or maybe a sewage treatment system that's a shared expense.
And generally speaking, it's a creative way to maybe get a little more density. So to get some more, but owners need to know that it is a strata. So it means strata meeting, strata council, financial statements, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And bylaws. So
yes.
So they might have the standard bylaws that say, two dogs or whatever, and they can't just assume that they can have their 4 dogs, right?
Exactly. And, and people sometimes think, oh, it's a bare land strata, it's really relaxed and loose. And it may be that way, but you're right. Those bylaws, if one person in the strata wants to enforce them, they can, and they can make your life really difficult. So it's really important to understand the ramifications.
Yeah. Okay. Well, since you're on strata, how about duplexes? What's the difference between, you see a duplex and then a strata duplex? What is the difference?
2 titles versus 1.
Okay.
So strata duplex, it's 2 individual properties with 2 separate titles. So 2 different owners, but yet again, it's a mini condo building with just 2 units. Yeah. So again, you have some shared expenses, the roof, the exterior, anything that's
insurance
common property. Yeah. Insurance. Yeah. So you have anything that's common property or limited to common property is a shared expense. Yep. Where a duplex, 1 owner, you might have 2 legal addresses, but you can't sell one half. You own both.
Yeah. You can't separate them. By the way, I had a question from somebody the other day about Dalhousie, the one that we have in Oak Bay there.
Yes. Yep.
Saying, well, if we bought this, can I stratify it and turn it into 2 units? Because maybe there's some money to be made.
Yeah. And what did you tell him?
I said it's very complicated because first of all, you got to go through rezoning. Secondly, it's got to adhere to today's building code. So that means new electrical, new plumbing, new fire separation, sound separation, all that kind of stuff. So it's very complicated. It's not that easy.
You're right. And the most important thing there is a potential rezoning and bringing it all up, because we had our clients over on Government Street. They just went through that. They had owned the legal duplex for like 40 years. And then it took them about a year to get that turned into a strata.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's a covenant on that too, right? That's a whole other story. That's a whole other story.
Whole other story. Exactly.
Okay.
So as we're running through stratas though, quickly, what's the strata fee? Why do people have to pay it?
Well, you just said a minute ago, there's shared joint costs with all the owners, right?
Yep.
Well, this is the way that people shared those costs. So the strata fee generally determined based on something called unit entitlement. So it's the size of your unit relative to the other ones, maybe some other attributes to the house as well too, or to the condo as well too. And depending on the building, it will cover things like the building insurance, yard keeping, elevator maintenance, janitorial in the hallways, HVAC system, all of those things. And some people say, oh, I'm buying a condo and I got to pay $400 a month for strata fees. But the reality is you do the math, and when you own a house, you got a lot of costs that sometimes you forget about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sewer, water, recycling, all of those things you're going to pay for in a home. Yep. And the biggest thing that most people don't do when they buy a house is they don't have a contingency fund.
Yeah.
Right. And that's probably the most important part of your strata fee.
Part of it is savings.
Is savings, right? So that is a forced savings account. So when the roof comes up or the windows need to be replaced, hopefully there's enough money in the savings account to pay that out.
Yeah.
Most people that buy a single family home, the roof leaks, they just, they throw it on their credit card for $10,000.
Well, you got to find the money.
Exactly. And so we always talk to our clients about saving up when they're buying a single family, and you should always have a little savings account for repairs and maintenance. And so it's a forced savings when a lot of people don't do it. So a well-ran strata can be a great investment.
Absolutely. So, and case in point, if the strata has really low strata fees, you got to wonder. Wonder.
I just sent a listing to a client this morning actually, and made that as a reference. It's a newish building, but I said these strata fees look low, and even though it's newer, they could be in a problem 5 or 10 years from now because they're not saving money now. It could affect them down the road.
100%. Well, we're having frequently asked questions with Kyle Kerr. He's associate partner at the Prime Real Estate team at Remax Camosun. Oh man, we're not even halfway through the list right now. This may need to be another episode.
Yeah, I'm into it. Let's
Yeah.
do
Okay. So we talked
it.
stratas, we talked listings, we talked all of that stuff. It's time for another break, and when we come back, we'll be covering more. It's all those questions that you always wanted to know as a listener. And again, if you're just tuning in right now, you can find us either streaming on cfax1070.com or go online and find our podcasts. The Whole Home Show with Tony Joe on iTunes or Google Play. All of our episodes are there, 150, 160 episodes. We've been doing this for a while now. We love doing this. We love coming to you guys. Anyways, let's take a break, Kyle. We'll be back in just a minute. Hi there, everyone. Thanks for coming back. This is the Whole Home Show. I'm Tony Joe. We're having an episode today of frequently asked questions, things maybe you haven't even thought about real estate. It's our language. It's our lingo. It's how we talk about things in the real estate world, but sometimes it doesn't make sense to normal human beings out there. And today's the day that Kyle Kerr and myself are dispelling any of this confusion about real estate. Okay, Kyle, so we've gone through talking about listings. We've talked about strata ownership, right?
Yep.
We talked about map areas early on. What are we talking about now? What do you want to cover?
Well, I think people, if they're writing their first offer, if they haven't written an offer in a while, there's a lot of lingo that comes up in a contract, and we talk about strategy. So maybe it's just the initial one is deposits.
Oh, yeah.
So deposits were done a lot differently 10, 15, 20 years ago, because I've been told that. And, we write our contracts differently. So why is a deposit so important within a contract?
So deposit is money. It's earnest money. It is required to make a contract legal. It's called a stakeholder. It's the buyer's way of committing to the contract. By law, that amount only needs to be $1, actually.
Yeah.
But in practice, what really happens is the size of the deposit is what demonstrates to the seller how committed the buyer is, right? So,
great point.
So if a buyer says, well, I'll give you $1,000 deposit on your $1 million house, well, let's face it, they would walk away from that in a nanosecond and kill the deal, right?
Exactly.
If it was a $50,000 or $100,000, I've had a $500,000 deposit before, right?
Yeah. I've seen some big ones too.
That's a show of commitment. Like, that buyer is going through, nothing is, you think about it as the seller. If I had a $500,000 deposit on my property, I'm like, nothing's going wrong here. I'm feeling pretty good.
Exactly. Great point. And two things is that can really benefit you in a multiple offer situation.
Yeah.
And I've worked through that with my clients sometimes. If you're competing with 2 or 3 other offers, and like you said, one buyer comes in with $1,000 deposit, one has 10,000, and you're able to put a $50,000 deposit down, which one is the seller going to look at and think, well, who's got the most money? Maybe that means their financial position is better because they've got more cash readily available.
Yeah.
The other quick question I get about deposits though is, who is it payable to? And why doesn't it just go to the seller? Because I've had sellers say, well, don't I get that deposit?
Yeah, I need that money. I need that money to buy. Yeah. No, it's earnest money. It's held in trust. It is there so that it's out of the buyer's hands, but it's also not in the seller's hands yet, right? Because the buyer needs to be assured that the seller's not just going to take that money and then choose not to sell the house, right?
Exactly.
The deposit also keeps the seller on track. Traditionally, the deposit gets held in the trust account of the buyer's real estate company. That's another function that we have in the real estate transaction. Although we do see in cases of new developments, sometimes they want the deposit money held in the trust account of the developer's lawyer.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And that's for financing purposes a lot of time, is that lawyer is working with the lender who's lending the money on the project, and that lawyer has to be able to show all those funds in his trust account to qualify for next stages of financing.
Absolutely. By the way, the deposit, so people often say, well, can I lose my deposit?
Yes.
So can they lose their deposit, Kyle?
Potentially, if they back out of the deal, of course.
Yes.
Right. So after you it all depends on when the deposit is placed. So it has become more and more common practice now for the deposit to be placed after the removal of subject conditions, which is your financing, inspection, document.
So they're fully
review,
committed. They're fully committed. They pay the deposit.
Yeah, so if you place your deposit after you remove conditions and then you back out of the deal beforehand,
Yep.
before it completes, well then yes, you run the risk of losing your deposit as well as potentially being sued for damages.
Yeah.
Now, it was more traditional before, and sometimes we still place it this way, that you will place a deposit during or upon
On acceptance.
acceptance of the offer. So at that point, you still have conditions on your offer, and so if the inspection goes bad and you want to back out of the deal, a release still has to be signed by both parties, but generally you would get your deposit back at that point.
Yeah, perfect. And as a reminder to listeners, the deposit forms part of the purchase price. So,
Exactly.
you know, if you get a $500,000 purchase, you got a $25,000 deposit. That doesn't mean that you're spending another $25,000. That means you only got to come up with a balance.
Exactly.
And it could be your down payment. You know, the deposit could form your down payment. Anyways.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I quickly talked about there, maybe I went too fast for people. So I mentioned condition dates, and I mentioned completion or closing dates.
Yeah. Two separate things, two completely different things.
Exactly. So why don't you run them through that quickly?
Okay. So completion or closing. This is the biggest date. The completion, we'll call it the same thing, completion/closing date. That is when the sale transfer occurs. So that's when the buyer's money gets sent to the seller. That's when the seller gives the buyer the title. It's the handover day, right?
Yeah.
That's the most important day in a transfer. That is not necessarily the same day that you get possession.
That's a great point.
Possession's often the next day, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever's negotiated. Condition dates are different. Condition dates are tied to when you're writing the offer. So, you know, you got an accepted offer, subject to financing, building inspection, review of title and all that. My condition date is called, 10 days from now.
Yeah.
That's when the buyer needs to be satisfied with everything and decide to 100% commit and remove their conditions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You're protected at that point, right? You're doing I always tell people you're tying up the property, you're doing your due diligence, and then so writing the offer is an important step, and people get nervous about that. But I always tell them you should be way more nervous about removing conditions, because that's when you're legally committing to the property, right?
100%. Yeah, because those conditions are your escape hatch, just in case. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
For legitimate reasons.
Exactly. It failed inspection, financing doesn't come together, suspicious information.
Not just because you change your mind. Not just because.
Exactly. Yeah. There's not a cold feet clause.
No.
Anyway. Quick question though, just about the completion date. When you talk about possession, because I've gotten those calls before from a buyer saying, well, today's completion day, I want my keys. It's the day.
Yeah. I gave the money. I gave my money. Where's my key?
Yeah. Exactly. And people have to understand that we have to get, generally the possession time is clearly set out in the contract. And if we don't get confirmation from the lawyers that the funds have been actually received, because just because you gave it to your lawyers 2 days before doesn't mean that they've actually handled that transfer yet. So you just have to be patient on that day and really remember what time and day you've set up for your possession, because it's not just automatic that we throw the keys to someone.
Yeah, and also true, just like you said, the buyer goes, hey, I paid the money, I want the keys, right? Is one thing for the buyer to say that it's in his or her lawyer's hands, but it's the seller's lawyer that says, I got the money, go ahead with it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about, how about subject to the sale of a house? Okay. Somebody wants to, I want to buy this house, but I got to sell mine first. So how can I do that, Kyle?
Well, actually, I just got an accepted offer for one of my clients, and it's subject to sale. So what that really means is you put an offer in, you have your standard conditions, what we talked about before, but then the sale is also subject to the sale of the buyer's home. So we just got this offer accepted yesterday. We're going to be putting the buyer's home on the market on Monday.
Yep.
And now we're going to have 45 days to try to sell that property and get an unconditional offer on it, so we can come back to this seller and say we've now removed that condition. So it's protection for the buyer, because if their funds are specifically tied up, on that property, then we need to be able to facilitate that. But there is something called a time clause on that offer.
Yeah. Well, okay. Hold that thought just for a second, because we should bring up the fact that, so the nice thing about a subject to offer is it's the buyer's way of saying, I'll buy your house if I sell mine. If I don't sell mine, then I'm not at risk, right? That's a
Yes, exactly.
okay. But then it can't just be subject to the sale of the house, because then you're tying up the seller's property. No seller is going to want to take that, right? So there's this provision called a time clause.
Yes, exactly. And so what that is that allows the seller to take backup offers, right, from other bona fide parties who are interested, who might not have a home to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So that second buyer will come in, put an offer on the subject property, and then once they generally remove all of their standard conditions, right, they've satisfied themselves with all their due diligence, they would remove those conditions. And now the only thing stopping them from buying that home is the seller's obligation to us as the first party.
Offer. Yeah.
So that then triggers what's called the time clause. Generally, that's pre-negotiated. That can be anywhere from 24 to 72 hours.
Yeah.
And what we'll see is that I would get that call from the listing agent saying your 48-hour clause has been invoked. And now my clients, as the buyers, have to make a decision. It's kind of like a 48-hour call on a first right of refusal.
Yep.
So either my clients would remove that condition and hope that the property sells in time, or they have to let that property release and, you know, move on to the next home.
Yeah. The time clause. Yeah. It's, I got to say though, you know what, if the buyer says, well, I still haven't sold my house yet, and you know what, I'm still going to continue on with it anyway, so I'll remove the condition. To me, you know, my standpoint is, well, why did you have it in there to begin with? Because if you were able to pull it off, you know, you probably could have negotiated a stronger offer. You could have, right?
Potentially. Yeah. 100%.
Who knows? Okay.
Yeah.
That's the subject to the time clause variant. Oh, by the way, I had one where it was a Vancouver, this was just last week. Vancouver realtor wrote an offer subject to the sale of their property. You said you're going online with this property on Monday. These guys haven't even gone listing yet. They're like, it's going to take us a couple of weeks to go online. So we want to tie you up. We're not even there yet, right? And then it's a different market area. So we don't even know what the saleability of that thing is, right? Risky.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I would say to any consumers out there, if you are looking to move to Victoria and you need to sell your house in another market, you're trying to make it subject to sale, you better give your realtor a lot of information and ammunition. And I've asked that of buyer's agents. Well, what's the market stats in that neighborhood? Are you priced appropriately? You know, because I'm always open to working with those types of offers. But if it's another market, I need data and information to be able to guide my sellers properly, and if that's the right offer to take.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you must always assess which is the stronger market, right?
Exactly.
So if you're coming from Edmonton, which is a soft market, and you want to make a subject to the sale of Edmonton in Victoria, which is a stronger market, that does not work at all. It works the other way around, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, goodness. Well, you know what? Hey, can you believe it? We're out of time. We can't even get to the seller's conundrum. That's the one we wanted to cover. We're gonna have to do another one. Yeah, it's a good one.
That's a good one. And we've still got, I look at our list here, we've still got a lot of great topics. So we'll have to do it again.
For sure. Well, we have been covering frequently asked questions and details about the real estate process that maybe you have never thought about before in your real estate buying and selling. Hey, maybe you've dealt with an agent, none of the stuff came up. It's because the agent did their job and took care of everything. Because really all you want to do is buy or sell real estate, and that's what we are here for as well. Listen, Kyle, thanks again, as always, for joining us. Kyle Kerr from the Prime Real Estate team at RE/MAX Camosun. I'm Tony Joe. Thanks for listening. We'll be here for you this time next week.